Okay, so I was asking somebody for advice, and they said, go ahead and do it. So I'm gonna share with you a joke that I told at a business conference this last week. So I figure if it's okay there, I'm gonna share one here. Okay, this is gonna get you thinking, because that's what this lesson is about. What's the difference, or what does a tick, you know, the one that gets on your skin, and the Eiffel Tower have in common? And you just, come on, use your head. It's obvious. They're both parasites. Okay, so I'm going to talk about, the name of my lesson is, Are You Ready for a Change? And I'm going to share with you 3 key ways that God helped change my mindset that radically changed my life. How many of you were here Easter Sunday? Raise your hand if you were here Easter Sunday, this service. Okay, so some of you heard me share a little bit about how, as a teenager, how messed up my mind was. I mean, it wasn't just a little bit messed up. It was horrible. Negative self-talk. You're ugly. You'll never get married. Meanwhile, I've been married 33 years, so I was wrong. But I'm not gonna answer the one about ugly. I don't think I'm that, but anyway, I had negative self-talk constantly in my head. And so mindset became a huge thing in my life. And I learned about this word called metanoia. It's kind of like metamorphosis, a complete change of structure or form. Like, you know, a caterpillar is a butterfly, completely different. Well, metanoia is a change of your mind. And it's a change of your mind that leads to a different life. And I found in my life, and I think with God, as I read the scriptures, if we can get the right mindset, the actions are more likely to follow. Now, fortunately with God, God has grace in our lives, and I'd love to tell you that, wow, my mindset is perfect all the time. And that would be a lie. So I got to keep on working on it. It's kind of like my wife, when I come in from a big bike ride or a run and I'm dripping with sweat, she tells me I stink. I don't know where that comes. She won't even hug me. You know, talk to her or you women about her being more affectionate with me. She won't even give me a hug. But you know what? I can't just count on that shower I took last week. And you guys are in luck. I took one this morning. You hit me in the right rotation. So I'm going to talk about mindset. So I want to ask you guys, with your mindset, are you happy? Is your mindset helping you? Not that you're perfect, but is your mindset overall, you go, yeah, I hope my kids, you have grandkids, I hope my grandkids have a mindset like I do. I do wish that for my kids. And again, part of it is I have a way to get it reset because it gets messed up even now. But I want to talk to you about, my first point was trajectory. What trajectory is your mindset on? And I learned this lesson years ago. It's called the horizon effect. Have any of you ever heard of that idea? So with the horizon, you know, the idea is I walk towards the horizon. Am I ever going to reach the horizon? No, it just keeps moving. And I hiked the Grand Canyon. How many of you have done that? Or at least been to the Grand Canyon? Okay, I know, yep, Natai's done it with me a couple times. And Ryan's going to do it with me when he gets a little bit older. So if you've never been to it, it's amazing. Well, when you hike down, the first time I hiked up, I looked and I said, there's the top. Because I hiked it, it was a little bit hot. And it was a false summit. So, okay, there's the top. It was another false summit. And I was a little bit frustrated because I hadn't reached what I wanted to. Well, I learned with the horizon effect, you never reach it. And so a key in life is, you know, I keep having ambitious goals and dreams and desires, but how far have I come? And so the next time I hiked the Grand Canyon, as I got partway up, I had a ways to go, but I looked down to the river below and I said, wow, I've come a long ways. Little mindset shifts like that really make a difference. So what trajectory are you heading on? And so I want to share with you about an experience I had early on, just before I became a Christian. And so I attended CSU here many years ago. I did pretty well. I got Senior of the Year as voted by all the engineers. And I had designed a computer chip by the time I was 21, sold on the market. And so, on outside terms, people would say, wow, Steve's doing pretty well. Inside, my mind was still messed up. I still had such insecurities and such negative self-talk. I went on, before I became a Christian at 22 years old, I went one date in high school, one date in college. Why? Because I was so insecure, so self-focused on myself. And I shared with you last week a little bit about that, but I want to share with you a little bit deeper. So I took a job at Intel Corporation down in Arizona, and when I got there, I found this miraculous thing. It's like I was only having to work like 40, 45 hours a week, and in college, I was going to school full time because I was working, and I was going to school, and I was one of these weird people. Now, some people say, Steve, that hasn't changed. That's true. But I was weird because I think, studied too much. And again, I was nervous. All that negative self-talk, it didn't help me. So when I got out of college and went working, now all of a sudden I have all this free time. And by then I'd started to think about God. And an interesting side note, I'd kind of been introduced a little bit to God. I met some Christians while I was in college. But I kind of saw these people are pretty committed. And honestly, my heart wasn't there. So I said, it's a little bit much for me. I'd rather just have the kind of, where I was coming from was a low start. My view of God, up until about that time, was more like, if you think about maybe someone thinking about Santa Claus as a young child. It's like, is it really there? And I didn't understand much about God. So I came across this verse, though, Hebrews 11:6. This is the first verse that radically changed my life. In Hebrews 11:6, it says, without faith, it is impossible to please God. Why, you might ask? Glad you asked. Because you first must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. So again, I had all this time. So I was walking out in the desert, South Mountain. Any of you ever been to South Mountain down in the Chandler area? Natalia has. We just went hiking there a couple weeks ago. And as I was walking along, a thought came to me. Do I really believe God exists? And up until that time, honestly, I was kind of like, maybe, but I wasn't convinced. And I thought at that time, if I saw a computer chip laying there in the sand, besides to be like, why is that laying there? But would I think, isn't it amazing that just through time and chance that computer chip just happened to be there? I said, no way. I said, that there had to be a designer. Because I designed a computer chip. And even back then, I knew that we as people are way more complicated than a computer chip. And my view is it takes more faith to believe there's not a God than there is. Matter of fact, that's something I share with some atheist friends of mine. I share with them, I think you have more faith than me to believe this can all happen. It's amazing if you know anything about how the earth works and about just subtle shifts and there'd be no life on earth. It's amazing. And so I settled that one after really thinking about it for hours and hours as I was out walking. So do I believe God exists? Yes. But there's another part to that verse, and it says, and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. That one was really easy for me to answer. Do I, at that time, have I been earnestly seeking God? That was easy, not even close. And I thought to myself, well, is there anything I've been earnestly seeking? Yeah, I sought my engineering career. I earnestly sought it. I went after it. I was one of those weird people that studied all the time. And I said, well, what would it be like, since I do believe God exists? What would it look like if I earnestly sought after God? And I had that frame of reference of working. So that set me on a different trajectory. And again, it's not that it was perfect, but it started to shift my thinking. And so I just want to encourage you, maybe you're not happy with the trajectory, with where your mind's at. All of us have things to work on. At least I still do. If any of you are perfect, please come talk to me. I want to see how to get there. I don't think it's possible, but that trajectory, you'll have some ups and downs, but over time, I can tell you, my mindset is someone barely over 39, just by a couple decades plus a year, has shifted so much. And my mindset, I'm so grateful. It's so much better because of God. There's a cool verse that I think we had at the slide up in 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians chapter 2:16, it says, we have the mind of Christ. Personally, that's my goal. Now, I'm not there. I got to tell you, I'm not there yet, but it's improved so much. And I'm so grateful for God's grace in my life when I fall. You know, Jesus has some radical ideas. So last year, we as a church, we kind of collectively memorized, I think it was Matthew 5-7, the Sermon on the Mount. And we got to choose which verses we wanted to. So one of the verses I chose was in Matthew 6, and I've forgotten the verse number, but it was, you have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, Jesus tells you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. I tell you, that has not come natural to me. You know those movies where they get back, they get the guy? Those appeal to me. Vengeance. You know, I want grace for me. But for other people. So, you know, I started doing that. Because I don't really feel like I have any enemies in my life, honestly. But I do have some worldviews, some ways other people think that don't jive with the way I think things should be. And so I pray for those people about every day, and it's helped change my heart a lot, so I'm not full of anger and rage. And I can have compassion that if I had been through what they had, I might think the exact same thing. So how can I show them love? No matter who they are, no matter how they treat me. You know, another little mindset thing I learned when someone really does something bad to me is this. So I was out biking a couple of years back down in some country roads on the way towards Boulder. And we're at an intersection. I saw a young guy in a tractor, and we were coming up about the same time, but I figured it'll be harder for a tractor to stop than me. So I stopped, thinking I was doing a nice thing. What did this young guy did? Well, he gave me a finger, but it was a different one than this one. And so my initial reaction was, I want to go thump this little guy. But I thought this question, you know, what's going on? I wonder what's going on in his life that makes him treat people that way. Help me have some compassion for him. I didn't pray for him at that time, but at least it took some of the rage off, and I didn't do anything. So how many of you have read this book? I know I've probably talked about it 10 times. Live No Lies. Raise your hands if you've read that. Okay, so we have maybe about 20% of us have read that book. It's a great book I encourage you to read. It has some basic definitions that I like. So one of them is, what is the truth? Well, one way to define truth is it's reality. It's what's real. So if truth equals reality, then what is a lie? It's unreality. And what are ideas? Ideas are just assumptions about reality. It might be true, i.e. real, or it might be false, i.e. a lie. And we have this this thing we call a mental map. It's just a collection of all these different ideas that we have about how I should live my life. Well, what Jesus wants to do, he wants to introduce you to his mental map, to his ideas, which I believe is truth. That's why I follow this. That's why I follow Jesus. One reason, yes, it has worked in my life and dramatically changed it, but I believe it's truth. Jesus had a lot to say about truth. I'm just going to share with you a couple of brief verses. In John 18:37, it says, "The reason I came into this world was to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me." John 17:17, "Sanctify them by the truth. Your word is truth." John 8:31-32, to the Jews who had believed him. These are people that said, yep, we think what you're saying, Jesus, is true. To the Jews who had believed him, Jesus said, if you hold to my teachings, then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And I was thinking back, just a recollection back, I'm not a programmer, but they have these things called if-then statements. If this happens, then this will happen. So if you really want to know what Jesus says is true, you can intellectually know it just by observing it. But if you want to really see it work, you actually follow Jesus. Check him out. See if you are happier being selfish, self-focused, talking bad. Is that really going to make you happier? Or Jesus has a different view. He says it's more blessed to give than it is to receive. I learned that lesson, and I still can be selfish. But I tell you, I go back to that verse to help me with my selfishness. And when I give, I'm happy. And this is true, a fundamental principle, whether you're a Christian or not. People that are giving are happy. So if you're not happy, one thing you might check out is, what's your viewpoint on giving? And one of my favorite Proverbs, Proverbs 11:25, a generous man will prosper, and he who refreshes others will himself be refreshed. So one of the things I do, if I'm feeling down, which I can feel down at times, I try to see, who can I encourage? And I find out, wow, I had my little problem. Look at the problem they're going through. That's much bigger. I'm not doing it to get encouraged, but I am encouraged by taking my mind off myself and giving to others. It's really powerful. So I want to challenge us with that trajectory. Which trajectory are you heading on? Are you kind of going down? If you'll choose to take Jesus up on his word and try living the life, actually living it, not perfect. None of us are perfect. But to try it, I tell you, it works. My life is radically, radically different in so many ways. And I just encourage you so much, try it. Jesus has the answer. That's why some people, they comment about I like to memorize scripture. I do, because my mind's so messed up. And you don't have to do it, but I find it so helpful if I'm messed up in an area of my life. What does Jesus say about that? And then as I'm out walking, talking, I can remind myself of things. Worrying's another one. I used to be really big on worrying. Any of you worriers out there? I have a family member I won't mention by name, not our immediate family, but this person feels like, if I can just worry about this and just be anxious about this, it's going to help it be better. And Natalia and Austin are back there. They know who I'm talking about. It's not them. So I learned this. I love in Matthew 6, look at the birds of the air. So guess what? Every time I go for a walk in the morning, one thing I do? I always look for a bird. And I can hear them usually easier, but sometimes I actually have to look a little bit. And when I see that bird, I think of that verse, and it reminds me, Steve, don't worry. It does no good. I can take action, but worry does no good. But again, that's not my nature. So I have that mindset that how can I have the mindset of Jesus more? Because you don't see Jesus worried. Did Jesus go through bigger things than me? Yeah, he had people trying to kill him all the time. He was the Son of God. Is this going to work? And he had to deal with so much more than me, and he didn't worry. What a great model for me. So that's point one, what trajectory? The next 2 points are going to be briefer, but the second one is focus. What's my focus going to be? And there's another verse that really spoke to me a lot, and it's in Colossians chapter 3, and my wife and I, we first got married, we actually memorized this together years ago, and actually memorized 1 through 17, but I'm just going to share with you 1 through 2. It's really powerful. It says, since then, you have been raised with Christ. Think about that. You've been raised with Christ. Set your heart on things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. And set your mind on things above, not on earthly things, for you died, and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is your life, appears, you also will appear with him in glory. And so what do I focus on? And I know one of the things we have in life, you guys remember that parable that Jesus talked about? There were different kinds of seeds. One of the seeds that I can relate the most to is that one with the thorns. And it says that the worries of life, the desire for things, just other stuff crowding things out in our life. That really is a pull. And sometimes, honestly, I see these old movies, and there's no like internet. There's no nothing but just people connecting with each other. And I kind of look a little bit, with desire. Oh, that must have been nice. And yeah, they didn't have a lot of cures for diseases. And, I like my movies, so I'm not saying they're wrong, but we have to watch that in our lives. So one thing that I do is I'm going to share with you my North Star. This is my top lifetime goal. And each year I write down my goals, and I always have this as number one. Jesus, when he was asked, what is the most important thing you can do? The most important thing you can do with all your life, he says to love the Lord our God with all our heart, all our soul, all our mind, all our strength. And the second is like it, to love our neighbor as ourselves. So with this mindset thing, with loving God, it's pretty basic. It's, I need to find a way to spend time with God and to hear his voice, not just my own, not just the world's. And I got to tell you, Fran and I, my wife, we have a habit, a pattern. Each morning we get up, and that's pretty much the first thing we do. Fran likes to pray on her knees. I'm a walker, and my dog, she's happy. She encourages me. That's why I'm the favorite, is I walk her. But I tell you, it's harder for some of us, because we had Ryan and Nora over last night, and you know what? It's busier in the morning. I don't know if any of you that are parents knew this, but it's actually busier in the morning when you have little kids than when your kids are adult and grown. So, but how can you find a way? You guys need that time with God. And I know you know that, but I'm just reminding you, it's kind of like if you haven't showered in a couple weeks, you stink. Brother, you need to stink. And funny true story, there was years ago down in Phoenix, there was a young brother who was dating. I was married by then, and I walked up to him and I said, hey, those sisters over there asked me if I could give you a mint. They said you needed a breath mint. I was playing with them. They didn't, but anyway, that's fun. So, but we need that. We need that. We need to shower. We need the hygiene. You need personal hygiene. You need time with God or you're going to be just like you are and probably worse. So the second part, though, this is what I want to dive into a little bit more. He says the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. So, and if you don't know it already, your neighbor, that's everybody. Now, you're not going to have the same relationship with everybody. I get that. But I want to talk about connections. My view, my observation is that we as a small church, and there's a lot of marrieds gone right now at the marriage retreat, which is awesome. But my view is campus has fairly well connected. They actually do a lot of things together. Not a surprise. And I see the Yo Pros. They're also fairly well connected. Why? They do a lot of things together. A lot of the rest of us, myself included, it's not as natural. I think we have a lot of opportunity for growing in connections. And now here's the part where I'm going to ask you guys to help me out with this lesson. So I want you to shout out, and I'll repeat it. Maybe raise your hand and then I'll call on you, but to shout out, what's a way that you find personally helps you connect with others in the body of Christ? Any ideas? Reese. Food. Oh, yeah. Way to go. Coffee. Yeah. Food and coffee. Yeah. Awesome. What else? What else? Any other ideas on what helps you connect, Parker? Reading and praying together, going on a prayer walk. So Jeff and I, we started doing that recently, and our goal is twice a month, and it's been more like once a month. But we do that, and we just walk and talk a little bit, and we pray. It's awesome. And Jeff does it at a time. We live quite a ways apart. Jeff, is it close to an hour, 45 minutes at least? Yeah, but we find a time that's a little bit convenient. Jeff's in town, and we make it happen. That's awesome. Any other ideas? Serving together. Yeah, Roy and Chandra, thank you so much for just leading the charge with helping us take more of the focus on ourselves. And again, we just finished the service for the park where we gave it a lot of stuff in the fall. We're going to be collecting again. How can we collect things for those that are homeless? Awesome. Okay, I want to share with you guys about something. You may not have heard of this yet. How many of you, if we only had this magical device that you could contact people with when you weren't there, like in their visual, audible sight, maybe something like this, a phone. But how many of you remember the days before cell phones? Because some of you have always been around cell phones, right? But this is a unique thing. My parents, I told my kids, hey, growing up, my parents didn't let me have a cell phone when I was a teenager. So, but just calling somebody up. And it's funny because I have my list of people that I just naturally think to call. And some people aren't on that list. It's not that I don't like them. It's just I'm not in that habit. I was talking to Jeff. Jeff and I are not on that list. Roy also, we've been starting to connect a little bit. And I just don't naturally think of that. So I said, hey, I think Reese is probably driving on the way to work right now. I think it was Friday. So I just called him up and we chatted 10 minutes. It was great. So there's a lot of opportunities we have. The Fort Collins midweeks, one thing I love about our Wednesday session is we get campus, Yo Pros, and then we have our seasoned people. Those are the people that are barely over 39. That's my definition anyway, and I just made the cutoff. So there's a lot of ways to connect with people. Also, I've done vacations with people. Anybody ever gone on a vacation with some other spiritual friend? Yeah, it's a great way to do it. I've gone on cruises together, fun stuff. What about if you were going to go through maybe some difficult or hard to do thing? Like, say I had to go shopping. If I could bring somebody with me, maybe that could lessen the pain of that, shopping. Yeah, you guys know what I'm talking about. But there's a lot of ways that we could connect with people, but it takes some effort and intention. And it's interesting because Jesus describes us, and the Bible describes us as the body of Christ with him the head. And when the body is injured, it hurts. So I have a weak link in my body. My weak link is my lower back. It's so frustrating. I can do really hard things, no problem, but I just bend over slightly and my back's out and it hurts. So what do? I say, hey, legs, abs, I'm going to call on you to step up your game. Help this lower back. He's kind of weak. So let's jump in and help him. And we as a body, how can I do that? If you have that mindset, how can I? I think it was Kennedy that said, ask not what you can do, your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. With us in the body, ask what I can do. And Fran and I, we were commenting, it was maybe about a month ago, about, there's some connection things that we think are weak. And here's a few other ideas that we came up with. And it's funny because I was thinking of this, said, hey, hon, I want to share this with you. She'd been thinking the same thing. So to further connect, I said, well, I think we should have a men's breakfast. So we're going to have a men's breakfast. It's the last Saturday of the month at 9 a.m. We had our first one, but I did a poor job of advertising it. So we had about 6 of us. It was awesome. Really want to encourage, if you're especially not feeling connected, come. If you're feeling connected, come too, but especially if you're not feeling connected, just time to eat. How many of you guys might be interested in coming to that? So that would be the last Saturday of this coming month. Okay, great. So we'll decide before then if it's going to be at Doug's Day Diner just down the road, or if we have too many of us, we might host it at our house, just because if we have like 20 of us, it might not work with a large group there. Okay, and then Fran had this idea, oh yeah? Well, if you're going to have a men's breakfast, I'm going to have a women's night. And so the last Saturday of the month, 6:30 at our house, it's a come hang out time. There'll be snacks. It's just a time to connect and to encourage each other. Is that going to solve everything? Of course not, but it's a step. I'm going to start a hiking club. I love hiking. Matt and I, we're the founders, and Matt's going to help me actually make this happen. Matt's running the sound back there. So everything from, if you want to do something challenging, like we'll do Longs Peak, and if it's too easy for you, you can just come back in and do a double. I'm not there, so I'm just going to be a lazy and only do it once. But we'll do other shorter hikes too. Just a couple mile walk. There's some beautiful stuff here. But if I could ask you, talk to Matt, or you can talk to me, but probably be more likely with Matt in the back there because he's helped me make it happen. So what's something you can do? And here's a secret. Like I'm sharing with you all these little secrets that have helped me. I've never struggled with feeling like people don't reach out to me. Here's the secret. 2 of them. Number 1 is I just reach out. And I found when I reach out to people, not everything's going to work. Some relationships are natural. There'll be some that you just sometimes get with the person. That's awesome, even if it's just one time. Some will become best friends, and that's great. But I don't think nobody's reaching out to me. And I know that for a real relationship, it is 2-way. And if that's not happening, maybe some of those people that you want it to be, you need to have a direct talk with them. And just ask them, and maybe they're not up for that, and that's okay. You don't have to have a relationship, or maybe there's something with you. Is there anything with you that you can learn that would help you to be better with relationships? So that's the first part. And then the second key that I've learned when I try to connect with people is it doesn't always take the first time. So I don't give up on people. Now, sometimes there is a young person here, not in this fellowship now, but that reached out to me and said, hey, would you disciple me? That's like a deeper relationship where you can really be open and vulnerable. And I said, yeah, I'd love to. He's like 18. I'm older than him, in case you didn't realize that. But he reached out to me, and it started out great, but, it kind of fizzled. I call him. He won't call me back. I call him. Okay, that's okay. Doesn't have to. I don't think he's mad at me. I think there's probably something that I don't know about that went on, or maybe it's just him, something he needs to learn in. But I tried, and relationship stopped. That's okay. I still pray for him, and maybe I don't want to pester someone and hound after them. Maybe I'll call him in a few months again. Maybe then he'll be ready. But relationships, connections matter. And so I want to ask you, are you happy with the relationships you have? If you're not, we as a church, we need to grow. I believe that. But a secret is, how can I be part, not the whole solution? So what could you do to connect with people? Some of you are better one-on-one in a group. Anything helps. So please take that extra little effort. Jeff and I were talking about some ideas there with what Jeff might be able to do with connecting with some people. And keep after it. So the last point I want to share with you is, what's my motivation? So this is, again, another mindset thing. So how have I been able to, for it's been now coming up on 36, 37 years that I've been following Jesus. And again, I'd love to tell you that it's just been, well, first of all, I would love it if it was just like that. If it was like, after I became a disciple of Jesus, it was perfect, never struggled. That would not be true. Second best, I'd love to tell you that it was just smooth. That's not true. It really was, woo! And that's us as people, and that's okay. But this motivation really makes a difference. And here's a verse. I could have chosen many ones that talk about it, but in Titus chapter 2, verses 11 through 14, this is one of the verses that addresses my motivation. It says, "For the grace of God has appeared to everyone that brings salvation." It, God's grace, teaches us to live godly and holy lives. Actually, I'm up on the stage. I got to look at it again. It teaches us to say no to ungodliness and worldly passions and to live self-controlled, upright, and godly lives in this present age while we wait for the glorious appearing of our great God and Savior, Jesus, who died for us and gave himself for us to redeem for himself a people his very own, eager to do what is good. Eager to do. So how can I be eager to do what is good? I keep as a major focus in my life and in my mind, Jesus died for me. I've told people before, I don't want to just treat that as a fact, and I do believe it is a fact, but it's just not a fact like, well, some guys went to the moon. I can't remember when it was. I think it was 69 when they went to the moon. That's a fact, I believe. But that doesn't change my life. But Jesus dying for me, I think, wow, how would I do? What would I do for someone that literally, I was going to die, they took my place? Man, what can I do? How can I live my life differently? I'm eager to do good. And guess what? Like I said, my mindset gets messed up. So each day, I got to go back. I got to spend time with God. I got to spend time with other people that are loving Jesus. Because you might have heard that you end up like the people you're around. And so some of the people I'm around need to love Jesus. I want that in my life. But that mindset matters. So that's the challenge that I have for you today. What trajectory are you on? Are you happy with your mindset? Do you want it to change? If you do want it to change, are you at kind of where I was at Hebrews 11:6, where, man, I really got to decide this if I really believe in God. And then once you get clear on that, I got to get really clear on, am I going to seek God earnestly? We all have ebbs and flows. And again, when you fall down, you get back up. You know, I was doing a triathlon a couple years ago, the Boulder Triathlon, and I went to the preparation where they tell you about the route and everything. So I'm on the bike section, and I'm coming down this hill, going about 30 miles an hour, and there's a guy there going 1, 2, and I can see people splitting. I go, I know I'm supposed to go one of these, but am I a 1 or am I a 2? And I guessed wrong. And so guess what? I go for the second round of the bike ride, but fortunately I found a way to shortcut it, and I only did about an extra 6 miles in that triathlon. But you know, we all make mistakes. We all have problems in our life. That's why I like John 16:33. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I've overcome the world. So get back up. And then there's that, we talked about the mindset, about the focus, about loving God with everything and our neighbor as ourself. How's your walk with God? What can I do to strengthen it? How are my connections with other people? You're not going to change all of these. So I do business coaching. One thing I've learned to help people make progress is, wow, Steve, I could work on all of those items. Great, pick one. Just pick one of these to focus on. Is it believing in God? Is it earnestly seeking Him? Is it your relationship with God? Is it your connections with other people? Or lastly, is it your motivation? Really being motivated by Jesus loving you deeply to die for you.